Hiya, I'm your host Terry J. Aman, and with Amy Mann, Ani DeFranco, Annie Lennox, Aerosmith, Alanis Morissette, this episode of VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack is brought to you by the letter A. Hit it! VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack. Episode 2, How Beautiful It Was Tomorrow. I'm so excited to welcome you to my music collection, the soundtrack of my life, a little window on who I am and what I listen to. I've been so happy to re-engage with my music collection, filling in gaps and just enjoying more music in my day-to-day life. For this one, I grabbed all the artists that began with A from my music library, put them in a playlist, listened to them in order, and assigned star ratings to them. We get into it, you'll see just how fluid and arbitrary that becomes, especially since then I've just been letting them play and, gotta say, hearing new things all the time. Let's get into this. Title track. So I figured out how I'm going to do this. I'll listen to a bunch of songs and then pick one artist, song, LP, or compilation to talk about in some detail, and then talk about the others as well. In doing this, some lyrics, some phrase I encountered is going to stand out. I'll use that as the episode title. For example, for my introductory episode last time, since I was updating it anyway, I thought the perfect REM-themed title redirect would be Episode 1, This Is Me, from my commentary on their So Fast, So Numb release off their New Adventures in Hi-Fi LP. Leading us to a highlight from Amy Mann's 1993 release, Whatever. This episode title was taken from her release 50 years after the fair, an appropriately nostalgic song recounting a couple's long, happy life together. We got through the 30s, but our belts were tight. We conceived of a future with no hope in sight. We got decades together just to get it right, I swear. 50 years after the fair. The whole image, post a line, I guess just for a second we thought all good things would rise to the top, was this lyric that stuck out for me seriously challenges my brain. How beautiful it was tomorrow. Yeah, I know the technology of verb tenses makes this kind of temporal weirdness possible. Even so, it stands out, particularly as the rest of the phrase is conventional. We'll never have a day of sorrow. I guess when you're a young couple just starting out, the irrationality of hope powers you through a lot of what actually happens. By the release of Whatever, Amy Mann had an established vocal presence, though her solo work was a significant departure from the pop hits we heard from her as the 20-something lead vocalist for the band Till Tuesday. In her early 30s here, she's singing a song called I've Had It. Sounds world-weary, jaded road song retrospect on a million road shows, though with the perspective of hindsight, she still had most of her career ahead of her. Oh, experience is cheap if that's the company you keep, and a chance is all that I need, and I've had it. But how beautiful it was tomorrow. I bought Whatever on cassette, probably from Discontent in Moorhead, Minnesota. I just graduated from college, and all those opportunities as an aspiring journalist were holding themselves just out of reach. I was pulling up the positions open pages of Editor and Publisher magazine, sending hard copy clips from my college newspaper gigs by mail to dozens of papers, hearing back from some and hearing nothing from most. Weeks were going by, months, and I was thinking of some way to maybe start my own youth newspaper, The Air, in the shadow of the Fargo Forum. I grew up in Moorhead. I was staying with my parents because it was free, but also not ideal. I was thinking I needed to get a journalism job because I had the degree, so that was the only work I could do. That's simply not true, which seems obvious now, but try telling a 23-year-old honors grad anything. I got this piece of paper that tells me I know everything. I feel like I was keeping body and soul together as a custodian at a hotel, but whatever was going on, hey, it turns out there was a market for the alternative newspaper, founded by who went to school with Ian Swanson, as far as I can tell, made entirely out of awesome. Got the High Plains Reader established a quarter-century ago now. Seems to be doing all right. But based on a connection I had through the Dakota Student, I got an interview with the general manager of a remote county weekly in Bottineau, North Dakota. Pay was $17,000 a year. At the time, more money than I could ever have dreamed of. I quickly discovered how far that would actually stretch, particularly once student loan repayment became a thing. And I've got to say, being deadline-driven was not good time management for a weekly. Those pages stood empty sometimes till late on production day. That said, the Dakota Student paid by the column inch, so I was used to writing long. I had a lot to learn, but I was just starting out, and I feel there was something in Amy Mann's songs that was inspiring to me. We made it down to New York with everything intact, but after getting back, it was Boo who made the joke. They don't give you any hope, but they'll leave you plenty of rope. How beautiful it was tomorrow. As for the time, it was rough, but I was starting out. I was happy with the work I was doing, coverage of ordinary small-town life, with lots of stories highlighting local and regional artists, and music reviews where my editorials were supposed to be. Probably my crowning achievement was a visit from the governor that took over all the space I had for news coverage, which happened right when I was supposed to be at an honors banquet at my college to accept an academic award. In fact, neither of these events were ultimately all that significant, but I figured I got the degree so I could do the work, and a visit to our town by the governor didn't feel like something I could skip. How beautiful. There's a lot on this cassette release that speaks to me now way more than it did at the time. Poetic strains through I Could Hurt You Now. This is for the one who was false, who taught me about building walls. One who always could turn it around and leave me there on shaky ground. Once I thought that I could never forget, and I have not quite done that yet. Same with could have been anyone. Your pattern is different than what it implies. The words may be true, but I realize it isn't description so much as disguise. Seriously, I get such an English major vibe from her lyrics. Not just the Pandora's Box or Dickens or biblical references. They're all pretty accessible, but just the structure she lays in beneath her thoughts, the sparse, arid imagery she uses to open 4th of July. Today's the 4th of July. Another June has gone by. And when they light up our town, I just think what a waste of gunpowder and sky. Oh yeah, I'm pretty much going to have to quote this whole thing because it's incredible. I'm certain I am alone in harboring thoughts of our home. It's one of my faults that I can't quell my past. I ought to have gotten it gone. You run into the word quell a lot in your lyric searches these days. Back to it. Oh, baby, I wonder if when you are older, someday, you'll wake up and say, my God, I should have told her. What would it take? But now here I am and the world's gotten colder. She's got the river down which I sold her. So that's today's memory lane, with all the pathos and pain. Another chapter in a book where the chapters are endless, and they're always the same. A verse and a refrain. I just have to do one more. It's from I Should Have Known. Always isn't always when it's not your photograph that I've been keeping. But you still live in those days when I'd stay awake just to watch you sleeping. Completely different vibe from how beautiful it was tomorrow. We'll never have a day of sorrow. We got through the 30s though our belts were tight. We conceived of a future with no hope in sight. We got decades together just to get this right. I swear, 50 years after the fair. 10 years together with Ralph, 11 this fall. I know a little more what she's talking about than I did when I first heard these lyrics. Freshly minted grad just starting out, already knew absolutely everything. It was smart then, clever. Listening now, I'm hearing wisdom. I'm glad I found some vibe with it then, and now, nearly 30 years later, I'm glad I kept it. Amy Mann was wise well beyond her years, and I've enjoyed discovering her in other capacities since. Per Buffy Wiki, singing original works This Is How It Goes and Pavlov's Bell at the Bronze on Sleeper, a 7th season episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where she delivered her exit line, I hate playing vampire towns. And I talked about it in episode 21 of VideoFuzzy, her appearance in American Crime Story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace. I had the episode House by the Lake on disc X136, so I pulled it up and watched it. The tension in the scene comes from Cody Fern as David Mattson, a young award-winning architect and love interest of unstable serial killer Daniel Criss' Andrew Cunanan, tried to make his getaway while Amy Mann sings Drive by The Cars at a roadside cafe. We can't go on thinking Nothing's wrong. Who's gonna drive you home tonight? Absolutely fantastic. I think Murph has made some dark storyline choices in recent years. I dig into that a bit in upcoming VideoFuzzy, but his musical instincts have always been dead on. Nip-tuck all the way through everything I've seen of his. So yeah, Amy Mann's Whatever, 1993. Check it out. As I bring in each set of artists and listen to their music, I'll be adding songs I bought under a defunct Apple ID purchased between 2006 and 2009, some 250 songs that never transferred properly from one machine to the next. I figured replacing them a few at a time would keep the expense pretty mild, and as I found other songs I enjoyed, I actually ended up growing my music collection some through my search. For artists beginning with A, the most significant entries, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse almost, were my 4 missing songs by ABBA, namely Mamma Mia, Take a Chance on Me, Fernando, and Gimme Gimme Gimme, solid disco-era entries. I almost credit Take a Chance on Me as being one of the more vocally complex pieces I'd ever taken notice of as I was growing up. The interplay between lead and backing vocals was something I hadn't really thought of before as a kid, and when I heard it again at Pow's Heart and Soul, those songs really stood out to me. Others I fed back into my playlist were Alanis Morissette's cover of Seal's Crazy, Ashley Simpson's Boyfriend, which was a great hook, but needed much stronger lyrics for what it was trying to do. I brought in Arcade Fire's Miss Murder, phenomenal, Amy Winehouse's Rehab, Aha's The Living Daylights, which I absolutely missed when I was putting my Bond episode together last fall, episode 78 for VideoFuzzy, Nobody Does It Better. I got Aerosmith with Steven Tyler singing Living on the Edge, which I added to my collection in 1993, seemed like an anthem opposed to the division we were experiencing in American politics at the time, and Dude Looks Like a Lady, which reads as transphobic now, but has its roots in Steven Tyler making fun of someone who's making fun of, well, him. So that was 11 songs to bring in, not too onerous, and mostly pretty enjoyable. The first set of songs in my collection by artists beginning with A, netted about 170 songs. Highlighted in the selection are LPs I talked about Amy Mann, as well as Ani DeFranco, Annie Lennox, Ace of Base, Alanis Morissette. I got some music I encountered while in Minot, Jack Brett performing them as 40 Sleeps. It's kind of a cool vibe. Then I've got the soundtrack for Slumdog Millionaire, and a lot of that hip-hop meets Bollywood vibe was credited to A.R. Rahman, so I got a bunch of songs from that show in here, along with little clumps of songs by, I mentioned, ABBA and Aerosmith, a couple from Adam Lambert, and a handful of songs by pianist Art Tatum from a 1950s song collection in here. 5 stars. I'll start with Aerosmith. Along with the 2 I mentioned, Dude Looks Like a Lady and Living on the Edge, I've got Love in an Elevator and Ragdoll, which are almost more in here for the music videos than the songs themselves, but Aerosmith for sure knew how to make those things. I feel like I Don't Want to Miss a Thing should be in here. It's one of Ralph's favorites, and it's a sweet vibe. Also, Hey, Where's the Sweet Emotion? Not in here. Grab that too. And Dream On. I saw I only had Glee's cover duet with Matthew Morrison and Neil Patrick Harris in here, so, well, sorted. My A collection's now grown by 3 more songs. Thank you, Apple Music. Yep, all of my Aerosmiths are in the category 5 stars, fantastic artistry, ranging from sweet to powerful to, well, raunchy. I've got about 35-star rated songs by A artists altogether, which was a bit of a surprise, but it was the first set I was assigning stars to. Probably I was being a bit stingy. Others to make the cut were Amy Allen's I'd Start a Revolution, which I mainly bought because it was the opening credits for Birds of Prey, a DC action-adventure series on the WB I think I was able to archive most of. I liked several by Ace of Base, including their cover of Bananarama's Cruel Summer, Alice in Chains singing Wood, kind of a dark vibe, along with Arctic Monkeys' Do I Wanna Know, dark, compulsive piece, feels restless and unresigned, taking no for an answer, which, well, just like human impulses, not every song is entirely healthy. We're going to get into that more as this project continues. And speaking of dark, Alabama 3's Too Sick to Pray. And that is, I heard this over the cold open for an episode of the BBC's Being Human that morphed Mitchell, the vampire, through all the different time periods he's lived through. Perfect vibe for the anime that entails. They sound familiar. Alabama 3 also did the theme song to The Sopranos. I never bothered with that show much or the song, but I enjoyed it well enough, and the reference they pulled in for The Simpsons at least once. Maybe I've just heard it less, but Too Sick to Pray feels like a better song. It's certainly less repetitive. Well, I like it, so it got 5 stars. I added Amelie's again after I heard Ralph listening to it on some road trip or another in May of 2020. It was apparently the opening credits for Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and the lyrics are complicated and powerful. Crying won't pave a way to forgiveness. Every sin you carve is everlasting. I'm lost in this maze of emotion. Who am I waiting for now? These once blank pages of my notebook become a plea to regain full and virtue. All this time I've been trying to run away from my own reality. She continues, we'll live for something as soon as we find it. I've forgotten, please remind me as day turns to darkness. Expired chances, but we gotta make it through again. And on to It's So Nostalgic. Maybe all the love is worth the pain. No words, just really glad I encountered that song. Art Garfunkel's All I Know made an appearance in an episode of Nip Tuck, and I needed to add it to this collection. When the singer's gone, let the song go on. It's a fine line between the darkness and the dawn. They say in the darkest night there's a light beyond, but the ending always comes at last. Endings always come too fast. They come too fast, but they pass too slow. I love you, and that's all I know. I love you, and that's all I know. Olivier Crobot's How Far I'll Go from Moana needed to be in here as well. Alison Krauss had a couple of 5-star appearances, one for It Doesn't Matter, a haunted, soulful track from the Buffy soundtrack LP, and I Never Cared for You, which I archived on disc X016 from an episode of Late Night with Stephen Colbert, and I needed to purchase June of 2017, this absolutely beautiful song. I know you won't believe the things I tell you. I know you won't believe. Your heart has been forewarned, all men will lie to you, and your mind cannot conceive. So all depends on what I say to you, and on your doubting me. And I've prepared these statements far from true. Take heed and disbelieve. The sun is full of ice and gives no warmth at all, and the sky was never blue. Stars are raindrops searching for a place to fall, and I never cared for you. Astonishing. 4 stars. I put more of my music in the 4-star category with the idea that I'd keep all of my 5-star songs in constant rotation and bring a couple different handfuls of 4 stars in to keep things fresh. For this set of artists, I had like 85 songs. You noticed I didn't name all of my 5-star songs. I'm not going to just read out a list of my 4 stars either. I'm not blogging my music collection, just highlighting songs of interest. It's a podcast, it's a music nostalgia cast, nothing comprehensive. If there's a song or an artist you feel I should know about, I've got show notes, email, comment sections, just let me know. 4 stars, that's where you can find the Ring-a-Ring-a Millionaire and Mosum and Escape from the Slumdog Millionaire soundtrack. There's a lot of the Ace of Base LP in this ranking, and it's been kind of weird, kind of cool listening to Ace of Base alongside ABBA. Oh, a bunch of Annie Lennox dumped into this ranking. I think so much of her stuff is going to be higher. As I listen to this stuff, the very subjective, very fluid concept of star ratings will manifest as songs wander back and forth from group to group. From Cold, I've got her singing, dying is easy, it's living that scares me to death. I could be so content hearing the sound of your breath. I pulled up her Little Bird music video. At the time, I thought she created all those looks from past music videos and they cut the film together digitally, but looking at it now, it looks like she was the host of a fabulous Annie Lennox drag show. So many different versions of her, so many of them outrageous, not least of which herself, maybe, as the host of the cabaret, which, yeah, as I listen to them more, some definitely need another star. What else? I got Pipeline by Apache 64 in this set, some surfing guitar rock. I've got Maybe It's You by S. Fourty Sleeps. That may be rated too high, but Jack Brett's got a good voice and a few decent entries. Anne Murray singing opposite the Indigo Girls singing A Little Good News is quietly affirming vibe with some imagery from Anna Nalick's 2 a.m. Breathe that grabbed my attention when I first heard it. You can't jump the track, we're like cars on a cable, and life's like an hourglass glued to the table. No one can find the rewind button now. Just cradle your head in your hands and breathe. Just breathe. Well, that should probably be 5 stars, but there's a light at both ends of the tunnel you shout, because you're just as far in as you'll ever be out, and these mistakes you made, you'll just make them again if you only try turning around. Oh, screw it, that song needs 5 stars. Done. Think I heard that one on Grey's Anatomy. It's a pretty cool vibe. 3 stars. So that's some 30 to 35 5-star songs and 80 to 85 4 stars. Some 50 to 55 songs got 3-star ratings in this set, and that's getting me into, nope, listen to Amy Mann's Way Back When a little more closely. That bumped back into 4-star territory. Yeah, she's truly got away with words, that one. I think sometimes it matters the context in which I'm listening to these as well, and that old-timey piano passage at the end of that one just grew on me. But yeah, 3 stars gets us into, yeah, there's some Ani DeFranco in here that's already breaking the rules. Well, I made them, I can break them, but technically there's a few pieces from her that are a cappella or just have a droning harmonium or something as a backdrop to spoken word poetry, which I think initially I was going to list as 1 star, but she's in here with 3. Well, I'm not going to give anything by Ani DeFranco 1 star, so let's dismiss that nonsense out of hand. She's an amazing singer, songwriter, and poet, and between her and Amanda Stark, a singer-songwriter I heard while visiting my friend Curtis Scaletta in Maine 1,000 years ago, spoken word poetry is not dialogue, it's not a comedy sketch, it's maybe not something I want to listen to all the time, but it's staying right here at least 3 stars. A pretty good likelihood it's going to ascend. The problem with a number of these artists is I brought them in from cassettes. My sister in 2006 was dating a tech maestro who built a PC for me. It was going to function as a media lab. It had sound video cable interface that in theory would process signals from a VCR, which I could then burn to DVD. This turned out not to be a practical solution to my video storage issues, but my computer did interface with my stereo. I actually turned up Yahoo Messenger chat logs from February of 2007, recounting the transfer of my music library in anticipation of getting a 30-gig iPod Nano. I wanted to get my whole music collection digitized, and excited at the prospect of hearing music, some of which I hadn't heard in years. A group of us got together on Yahoo Messenger and watched all 3 series of Buffy, Angel, and Firefly in a year, which divided up to about 5 episodes a night every Saturday. To a dozen or so participants, I found where I was chatting about this exact thing. And I quite randomly found an email from a couple months later updating my progress. I got an iPod Nano, I said. I updated all my CDs to it, which was a snap. More time-consuming has been my cassettes. That is a process that has absolutely not been doing itself. I'm not sure what my motivation is beyond obsession, but really, some of these things I haven't heard in more than a decade, and damn, it's been cool to hear some of this again. Well, when I brought them in, the sound quality suffered. I don't know what editor I was using, but results were subdued, to say the least. Volume drops appreciably from more directly digital sources, so these songs experience additional hurdles star rating-wise. I also noticed when my MP3 player jumbled them from their usual order, a couple of Ani DeFranco's song files needed to be repaired. The last verse of one showed up at the beginning of another. I think it was the end of Rockabye and the beginning of She Says, both from her not-so-soft release. All of this is dangerously close to breaking another rule about getting into the weeds on technical nonsense, but I thought it was weird that I'd never run into it in the 15 years since making those transfers. Glad I noticed now. It wasn't a tough fix to make once I discovered it. Better editing software, ultimately better sound quality. I may have to run everything through it just to make it all more listenable, and I might find more 4- and 5-star entries. Also obsessive? Me? Nah. It's true none of my Ani DeFranco's got 5 stars, but there's like 20 or so that have 4 stars. She's got a fascinating voice and mind. I loved encountering her again in this project, and I definitely heard this line from Willing to Fight. I was a long time coming. I'll be a long time gone. You got your whole life to do something, and that's not very long. Wow. Her 3-star present appears to include next big thing, which does not belong there. He does not hear what I'm saying. He's just looking at my 8x10 and wondering about the part that was left out. Does she have a body that can really pull them in? Well, I guess she must. As I write this, she's on tour. She's got a stop scheduled in Minneapolis at First Stab in January, where she'll play for the door. Nothing more, I guess, just being a Tuesday. 14 hours on the road at the end of January, in the middle of the week. This part of the world seems like it'd be a pass, but it's been a good long time since I got to a concert of any kind, and hers would certainly be that. Also hopelessly underrated would appear to be As 40 Sleeps entry, Coffee, the sexy addiction to which I am victim. That'll be up for reconsideration at some point. And there's just a handful of 2-star entries. 2 stars. Hardly worth that drop-in, one of which has been growing on me steadily. It's Arcarna's House of Fire, from and inspired by Batman and Robin soundtrack, which was brought in from cassette, hard to hear easily, and like I said, this was my first set assigning star ratings. Probably I was a little stingy with those things. Unless I got really technical with my spoken word entries by Stark and DeFranco. Oh, hey, they could be a law firm. I didn't even have 1-star entries with this set, so we'll just look forward to that. In the meantime, if there are 8 artists you wanted to hear more about or felt got snubbed in this installment, let me know about them. Better yet, send links. I'm going to be listing a lot of the songs I talked about in here in my show notes. You can find searching VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack. It should come right up. You'll have my links, I'll listen to your links. It'll be a whole huge music sharing thing that keeps artist integrity top of mind and all distribution rights intact. Contact me through my show notes or at tjaman1970@yahoo.com. For VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy listening. If you're still here after the credits, I was talking about Amanda Stark, and I don't have any way of sharing anything she did. I just had a cassette I bought from the artist directly. It became MP3s, and now all I have is the sound files. But when I auditioned for a role in summer theater at Minot State University, I think it was 2008, I reworked a song of hers as a monologue. It was called Raving, released 1993, and I'll share it here to give you a taste of that artist. Now, Tracy was crazy, but she once made a professor of philosophy cry. Albeit he was drunk at a bar called Jerry's, and it was very late that night. She made him cry, and all the while he just shaking his head said, "My God, this girl is a genius." He read reason in her rambling, rhythm in her chaos, wisdom in her wandering, and an incredible innocence that in all his years of teaching he had failed to bear witness. Now, Tracy was not a student. She was a waitress at that time, but what she served up you could not find on any menu. It was a midnight special, a bitter, hard-to-swallow dish that only the most daring would consider. No, she was not the screaming prophet of the street corner crazy, the mumbling to herself hearing voices kind of crazy. She was not the obsessive type, nor was she paranoid, but there was definitely something odd about that girl. She was the one you wouldn't sit with on the bus or sat next to in the lineup at the bank or in the store. She commanded attention by association with the person whom she managed to engage in conversation. See, there are people in this world who bought the book on how to get through life without making a single mistake, and page 1 of that book says, "Don't buy this book," and the rest of the pages are blank, but nonetheless, the kind of person who would buy that book is the kind of person who would be shook to the roots of their affected pride. If Tracy talked to them, they were mortified. They saw her as an unsightly reflection of themselves, and so they did what they do best. They called and complained to the authorities and said, "You better give this girl a lesson in morality." That's how Tracy came to find herself sitting across the desk from some doctor or another, being probed and analyzed, questioned and committed, and then released because her test results were inconclusive. She was more of a nuisance, a disturbance to the peace, a disruptive element of society. She was vile and depraved, obnoxious and malevolent. She was devious and down, but she didn't care. She'd just throw back her head and laugh, the kind of laugh that you stop noticing the laughter and notice instead the botched tonsillectomy or the fact that she hadn't had her wisdom teeth removed. I guess she saw a world within the one we call reality, but this is like nothing you could find on TV. It was a Twilight Zone episode that had never been written, or a chapter of Ulysses that had somehow gone missing, or a song from a prayer book worshipped into submission, or an exotic songbird on the verge of extinction. Yes, She was different. She was so different that we could all point at the same time to the same thing, to the something that stood out like she was encased in a frame, mounted on the wall with a sign around her neck that said, "Drink me, and you will become either very big or very small." And that's what happened to the professor that night. And the faculty of philosophy will never be the same. Singer-songwriter Amanda Stark, Raving, released 1993. Thank you.